Hi Huskies! Hey, this week's art activity is a folded paper project, and I think it's super cool because we don't need to have any extra tools. No scissors, no tape, no glue. We actually are going to use our paper and fold it to create this really awesome bookmark that I think is kind of neat because you're going to be able to really personalize it at the very end, okay? So I want to point out a couple of important things that you need to know. A 5.5-inch square piece of paper is what you're going to want to use, and if you're using a piece of copy paper or printing paper, you should be able to get 2 squares out of that paper. It's really important that your square is really straight and that it's cut very straight as well. So you may want to ask for a little bit of help with some measuring and cutting to make sure that you're starting off with a really nice square piece of paper, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn my paper here on an angle just because I think it's a little bit easier to start with our fold. And I know that folding can sometimes be a little bit tricky. So it's okay if you need to ask for somebody to help you hold your paper. That's fine, but I'm going to try and give you a couple little tips here for folding as well. One is to make sure that before you make any creases that you know your corners are really lined up nice and straight there and you hold it. So whether someone else is doing it or you're doing it, make sure that you've got it held in place so when you go to fold, it's not going to shift. And I just like to slide one way and then the other, still holding my paper. And that way I know that my paper isn't going to shift and go a little bit crooked. The other thing that's really important with folding is to make sure that your creases are nice and tight. So I like to take my fingernail and just kind of run along there when I need a really nice tight fold, okay? That's the first step. I'm going to go up here to the top now. I've folded it into my triangles, but I'm going to leave my bottom piece here on the table. I'm going to take my top triangle and I'm going to come toward me. So I'm going to be folding down here towards my fold line. And again, it's really important to make sure that you get it straight. You don't want it to come further than the fold, but you need to make sure it comes at least to the fold, because if it's too far or not far enough, it will affect your other folds. So I'm going to hold this with my finger, and then I'll use my other hand to just kind of put a pinch there on my fold line, and I'll go to the right and to the left, and that gives me my nice fold, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and crease that because that looks good and I want it to stay nice and tight. Because remember, without glue or tape, this has to be able to stay together just by my folded paper. All right, I'm going to come down here to my right bottom corner and I'm going to go back up here to the top. So I'm going to go up here and again make sure that it lines up really nice into the corner before I do any creasing. And sometimes when I have 2 things that need to kind of line up and be the same, I like to give it just maybe a little bit of a fold, but don't crease it really tight yet. And that way, if I need to do any adjusting, I can still do that before I make a really hard, kind of permanent kind of a crease. So that looks like it's lining up really great there. So I'm going to go ahead and put my little crease line there. Oh, see how I've got a little split? So I may have to go in there when I do my nice tight crease, and I'm going to do a little bit of adjusting. I'm going to hold that corner so it doesn't move, and that way I know it's going to stay nice and straight once I start folding my little flaps in. So I've got these 2 little flaps here that I just created. My folds are down here at the bottom and it's open at the top. You'll see my first fold that I made has created this little pocket. So if I kind of push on my corners, you can see it opens up a little bit. That's going to be where we're actually going to fold these 2 little flaps. And then I'm going to be creating the side that's going to create my actual bookmark that will stay on a page. So I'm going to kind of roll this in, and I'm not going to give it too tight of a fold yet because I want to make sure that my other side lines up first. So I'm going to give it just a smidgen of a pinch. And then I'll go to the other side and I'm going to push that down. These little flaps here, what I'm folding in is the same size as this triangle. So it's going to be pushed all the way down here to the bottom. And once you can see that that looks like it's down there, it should line up against that little fold we made, our very first big fold after we went into our triangle. So once that looks like it's lined up and kind of straight, then I'm ready to crease that, and I can adjust if I need to, but this is where I want to come in and give this a nice tight little fold line here, because that's what has to hold these flaps in place in order to be able to hold that on the pages of my book. So I've got a couple that I've already made here, and I'll show you my examples of how these stay right on the pages. What I did here is I have 2 bookmarks, and one, you can see my little pocket here is at the top, and so that has to go on the top of a page. This one, the pocket sits at the bottom, and either is fine. It's really kind of up to you what you want. But I drew both of my animals here on this flat side, and that's my challenge to you. I guess I didn't mention that yet, that I want you to see what kind of an animal you could create and draw on your bookmark. So it might be a favorite animal, it might be a pet you have at home, it might be something that maybe you've done some research on, but I want you to be really creative and have some fun with this. So you can see here on my owl that I just drew the face, I added the wings, I thought those fit so well in the corners, and added some feather details. The thing about this one is it looks like it's really close up. I don't see the outline of his body, I don't see claws, I don't see the top of the head. To me, I don't think that's a big deal. I think it just looks like I'm really close up, and I think that's kind of an interesting perspective on that. My little husky guy here, I have a little bit of extra space. I don't see the rest of his body, but I can see all the details of his face. So I started out by just drawing, the lines where his fur changes color, added the details of his, eyes and snout and his ears, and then I went in and I added the rest of the fur. Now, I could take this a step further and use some of my coloring tools and add some color, which is what I did on this little guy here, my frog. What I did want to point out about this one, though, is that I actually drew on the side where the pocket is open. So these I did on the flat side, but my frog, I actually kind of liked the way that that pocket made it look like his mouth was open. So you can have some fun with that as well. You might think that whatever animal that you are considering, maybe you draw it with it looking like it has teeth or its mouth is open. So after I drew it, I added some color. I also did add a little bit of construction paper that I cut and I glued on the inside. You might want to do that with ears or fins or wings or something like that. But I could have easily just have drawn that tongue down here on the body somewhere and colored it, and it would have been just fine as well, okay? That just gives you 3 ideas there. I'm sure that you will be able to come up with lots of great ideas for an animal that you can have some fun detailing on your bookmark. I'd love to see what your bookmark ends up looking like at the end, so keep those pictures coming. I've loved seeing the artwork that you guys have been creating. You can email it to me at my school email, or if you want to post a picture in the comments on the Hutchings Elementary Facebook page where the specials links are, that's another option as well. So most importantly is I want you to have fun and be creative, okay? So good luck!